Hi, this is episode, I was gonna say, this is our late night edition and lecture number 5 of the Healing Diaries, writing about illness. And this week we're looking at drama and scene, including dialogue. I decided to include a couple clips from the film Philadelphia in the lesson. You might be familiar with it. It's a classic, a modern classic about the AIDS epidemic, and it stars Tom Hanks and Denzel Washington. And I have included a couple scenes, clips that are very short from the courtroom. I am aware that that's probably not the level of drama that we will be writing about, but if you feel comfortable showing us that kind of scene, you can this week. I thought that those were particularly excellent, though, as far as the sort of high stakes that can come with these battles for life, reparation, dignity, and wanted to include them even if these don't touch on your particular scenes that you want to convey. But if you do see some crossover, I hope those will be inspiring to you. So we are actually going to be reading authors Mike Scalese, Sandra Beasley, and then the deaf poet, Raymond Antrobus. And there's a lot of humor and also some childhood memory in all of those. Mike Scalese was a young man when he was diagnosed with acromegaly, which is an endocrine disease of the pituitary gland. And Sandra Beasley is a poet who has many disabling food allergies, and that's her journey from childhood to today. And then Raymond Antrobus intersperses his latest book of poetry, the Perseverance, with scenes from childhood, and I have included a couple of those in a dramatic monologue. So that will be our material, and then I just want to go through sort of the craft lesson quickly, and what so far when you've been writing in first person narrative in essay form or in poetry, what's been really key is persona and voice. So I just wanted to kind of define those before we go into what a dialogue would be like, even if this is dialogue in memoir. This is from Vivian Gornick, who is a memoirist and essayist, has written a lot on the forum, a well-known little craft book called Situation and the Story. The creation of a persona is vital in an essay or memoir. It is the instrument of illumination. Without it, there is neither subject nor story. To achieve it, the writer of memoir or essay undergoes an apprenticeship as soul-searching as any undergone by novelist or poet. The twin struggle to know not only why one is speaking, but who is speaking. To tell that tale, I had to find the right tone of voice. The one I habitually lived with wouldn't do it all. It whined, it grated, it accused. Above all, it accused. Then there was the matter of syntax. My own ordinary everyday sentence, fragmented, interjecting, overriding, also wouldn't do. It had to be altered, modified, brought under control. And then I could see this as soon as I began writing, that I needed to pull back, way back from these people and these events to find the place where the story could draw a deep breath and take its own measure. In short, a useful point of view, one that would permit greater freedom of association, had to be brought along. What I didn't see, and that for a long while, was that this point of view could only emerge from a narrator who was me and at the same time not me. So far, I think that your writing has been dealing with cultivating voice, your own voices, and presenting those. And I've been very pleased to read your work and also to see you commenting on each other's writing and saying to one another that you like a narrative style, particularly you like a certain pitch that's being made, and that is all appropriate to memoir. So there is a kind of persona making that takes place, and that's sort of a step one. And then there is something in bearing witness, and where there is another character or characters involved, other people, and capturing the interchange. And here is a little bit about that. Huck's "I was there, I was a witness" tone had an appeal that is characteristic of first-person narratives. By allowing one character to narrate, the author surrenders part of his control over the elements of the story. He must achieve his own purposes, which may be very different from those of his character, through implication, irony, and other devices. The first-person narrator may be a major participant, a minor participant, or a witness to the story he tells, or he may simply retell a story he has heard. In effect, he is saying, "This happened to me," or "This happened mainly to somebody else," or he may write his story for a particular reader character as a story told through letters, or for readers generally as a kind of autobiography or memoir. So although this is referring to fiction, this is Marvin Diogenes, who wrote a book called Crafting Fiction. It also applies to writing, which includes scene work. And that those different perspectives, which can be that you are the main character, or you are a scene person watching something unfold. And first it's figuring out where you as the narrator are positioned in a scene, and then opening it up to the various speakers. So you have at least one exercise that deals with dialogue, and here are some dialogue tips. I think Mike Scalesi's dialogue is excellent, so I hope you will be able to study the Brand New Catastrophe a bit for especially the scenes that he has with his mother, because they are very contentious with each other. They're kind of at war with each other. They're at loggerheads all the time. They're two very strong personalities. They're both sick, and they're both fighting for space and attention in a way, while his diagnosis comes through. These are rules for dialogue, which again, they cross over into fiction and nonfiction. And with nonfiction, sometimes you're recreating a scene and you have to pull this dialogue from memory. You have to reconstruct it. It's coming. It's your sort of your best shot at what was said, and that's all you really need to do, is just tip us off that you are sort of reassembling a scene. And it's not necessarily verbatim, and that is enough. You can do this in memoir. So first rule of dialogue is the shorter the better. Dialogue reads very quickly to a certain point, right around 3 lines per speaker at a time. So you don't want to let characters ramble on, unless, like Antrobus, you're working with dramatic monologue, in which case it's a breathless exercise. Focus on conflict. Dialogue is a fantastic place to introduce and develop conflict. And this is from Ethan Kanan. "I love your dress," she said. "I love your dress," she said. "Did I see it on the sale rack at Goodwill?" The second is the piece with the piece of dialogue with the jab. Focus on humor. Humor works well in dialogue. If you or your character has a funny bone, dialogue is the place to use it. You will notice that some of the exercises this week do allow you to take a humorous angle, and I encourage you to do that if you feel up to it. Lies are good. Anytime a character lies to another character, the tension soars. Well, we see that often, I think, in this field that we're talking about. These sometimes a diagnosis that's being hidden, sometimes not knowing what's really going on with the patient. It just seems like there's a lot of that. So it's well placed in dialogue, revolving around our topic. And then tip number 5. Try not to have a lot of sort of question and answers. How are you feeling? Well, how are you today? Good. That doesn't tell us that much. So try to turn questions into statements where you can. Better, shorter, sharper, without a lot of explanation. Aim for this. try to jump right in, go to the heart of the matter, not a lot of preamble, not a lot of introduction. Avoid mundane dialogue. Hello, how are you? Talk to you later. You don't need that at all. That's just, again, that's just filler. One way to avoid including mundane dialogue is to steer clear as often as possible of scenes that begin with characters entering rooms or answering phones. Start in medias res, and most of the mundane dialogue will have already happened. Now, those are care of Naming the World, Brett Anthony Johnston, and his, that's sort of summary of a summary on some of the key elements of dialogue. A book I definitely recommend on craft. It's mostly related to fiction. I just wanted to give you a couple examples of some dialogue that is working well. And I just wanted to say that if you want to write a dramatic scene this week, if that's where your focus is, then absolutely go for it. It does not have to be as funny as Mike Scalisi is, or as witty as Sandra Beasley. It can be actually what you found to be an urgent situation and that you want to record in some way. And so absolutely go for that as well. That's just not what I'm quoting from right now, but I don't want to stop you from attempting that. So this is from the brand new Catastrophe. And I just had a couple. Telling a good, this is from the prologue, a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. Telling a good catastrophe anecdote means becoming a maestro of sympathy. People's reactions to these kinds of stories usually involve some defense mechanism, a tilting or nodding of the head, a crinkling of the brow, or the low-tone repetition of words like, wow, oh no, sounds horrible, or this is one to watch out for, I'm just really glad you're okay. As the teller of the anecdote, the conductor of an experience, this is the wrong place to be. Any of those responses indicates that you've made yourself pitiable and taken your audience hostage. This is where they are likely to go on a conversational autopilot or retreat into head nodding while they try to figure out what role to play in your I had an awful thing happen to me story. The trick to keeping them engaged is to focus on the oddities and ironies that would seem incredible and ridiculous in any context, not just that of your disaster. For instance, the name of the doctor who discovered my brain tumor? Sunshine. He heard all the jokes. Of course he had. We met during hour 6 of the ER stay in Brooklyn at a training hospital affiliated with an unremarkable university. I had admitted myself for what I thought was a migraine, an undodgeable wave-like cloud of pain that for the past 9 hours had swished slowly to all ends of my brain. Sunshine was young and square-jawed and introduced himself the way I imagined he greeted every new face, with a stiff handshake and a pursed tone. I'm Dr. Sunshine. That braced him like a boxer for every quip that swung back at him. Here was all I could think of. Get out of here. He held the results of my CT scan taken hours earlier. There's a mass on your brain, he said. Then he curled his forefinger and thumb into a circle that in any other context would mean A-OK. We got a proper MRI first thing tomorrow, he told me. We'll know more then. Is it the C word, I asked. Don't know yet. Am I going to die? Don't know that yet either. I don't have insurance, I said. Let's not worry about that right now, he told me. A hard surge tumbled against the banks of my skull. Look, just get it out, I told him. Go grab a melon baller and get it out. Sunshine called my parents in Pittsburgh and my girlfriend Lauren, who was then on a trip to Los Angeles. He colluded with the hospital administrative staff to verify the bogus insurance arrangement my father quickly set up for me through my family's Pittsburgh-based heating and air conditioning company. Then Sunshine admitted me upstairs to a dimly lit floor with rounded walls. Patients' beds circled the admin desks like spokes, at least 15 of them separated only by thin paper-like curtains. There were pockets of quiet throughout the night, but eventually we seized on one another's discomfort and swung into a chorus of bickering that turned our nurses raw and curt and impatient. Any movement triggered ripples in my head of pain, so I kept still and awake, rejecting all care that wasn't direct pain relief. That included hygiene. In the morning, just before the MRI, a nurse appeared holding a small plastic stick loaded with toothpaste, no bristles, and pushed it at my face. "Sir, you must brush your teeth," she said. "The smell from your mouth is very unpleasant." Notice how the focus here is not on the vast pain that commandeered my head that night. Pain is a socially competitive thing, and too much emphasis on it can cue people to recall their own bouts with pain or compare theirs to yours. Take, for instance, my mother, who walked worry-shaken into the Brooklyn Training Hospital, a veteran of her own burgeoning string of catastrophes, all of them heart-related. By age 50, she'd undergone 2 angioplasties and a bypass, and had partially lost sight in her left eye due to a blocked artery. She'd perfected the flat, dismissive tone in which she'd respond to anyone else's tale of woe, assuring them, in essence, "Take it easy. I've been through worse." Scalise really makes a laughing matter of this terrible thing that happens. But it is his own analysis, I think, of these scenes, which is so valuable. He sort of breaks down why he has to tell them this way, how he's going to get effect, the best way to convey your story. So you can take his tips or leave them, but I hope you enjoy the reading, and your larger pieces are due this week and next week for 2,500 words. Thank you very much, and keep reading.